Are you a developer that absolutely loves talking to their friends about the cool project that you're working on, or that cool blog that you heard about, or just this cool idea that you've got? Do you hate marketing or do you just suck at it? If it's either of the two, or if you fit this description at all, you're a lot like me. And I've found one philosophy that has helped me tons and tons with my marketing for my small startups and all of my little projects. It's called building in public. Let's talk about the building in public philosophy and how it can help you with marketing and building your small projects. First off, if you're new to the channel, I am Viking Dev. I do security, startups, and software development. So if you're interested in any of those things, check out the channel, maybe consider dropping me a like and a subscription. I would appreciate it a lot. So first, let's talk about what building in public is, and then we're going to talk about 5 different reasons why I love building in public and why it helps a ton with small to medium-sized startups and tech projects. So what is building in public? Building in public is a philosophy around building applications and building things with as much transparency as humanly possible. Essentially, you're trying to share every single step of the journey while you're building a tech project or building something out in your shed. Building in public really can apply to all things. I've got 5 reasons why I love building in public and why it's something that I've applied to my small startup, Malparse. First off, as I talked about before, I suck at marketing and I hate it. I hate marketing, I hate PR, I hate trying to sell things, but I also like making money, which is kind of an issue. The reason why I like building in public, or one of the reasons why I like building in public, is it's free marketing. You don't really have to worry about marketing your product because essentially what you're doing is you are blogging or tweeting or creating YouTube videos for every single step of the development journey. You're not just waiting until the whole thing's done and dumping it on your user's lap and saying, hey, look at this cool thing I built, and hoping that people like it. Basically, you are marketing it at every step of the way. Now, a lot of people like using things like alpha tests and beta tests and sending closed tests to people as a form of marketing, and that's fine. You can also do that as a part of building in public. Building in public doesn't necessarily mean that you don't do all of the other normal things that are associated with startups, like beta testing, alpha testing, things like that. What it means is essentially you're putting transparency first and you're sharing as much of the journey as humanly possible. Basically, the second you open up your IDE with just an idea in your head, or even before that, when you just have the idea in your head, you are marketing that out to the world and telling people, hey, this is a cool thing that I'm working on. If you want to join that journey in some way, whether it be just following me on Twitter or joining a newsletter or following me on YouTube or any of these other different social media sites, it's free marketing. You're literally just telling people, hey, I'm posting this out to the world. If you're interested in it, then follow me. And what that ends up translating into is basically you don't have to sit there and spend a ton of money and a ton of time on Google Analytics and Google Ads trying to tweak your audience so that you're spending as little on ads as humanly possible while reaching as many relevant people as possible. I've done it a couple of times and I sucked at it, and I don't ever want to do it again if I can avoid it. So I like building in public because it's honestly the laziest kind of marketing. There is a lot of work that you have to put into it. So when I say lazy, it's a different kind of work. Essentially, you're putting work into PR that you enjoy doing instead of the markety type of PR and Google Ads and things like that. Again, you can run Google Ads and do all of the other different kinds of PR things that you would normally associate with building startups, but you're putting more of an emphasis on the journey, building things out in front of everybody and using the act of building and the act of developing your business and developing your product and developing your application. That is the front of your marketing instead of kind of the markety PR side of it. Now, you might be wondering, if I'm building in public, who's watching? What is this public that you're talking about? The second cool thing about building in public is that it really emphasizes building a brand. Basically, when you're building in public, people are associating you with your application or you with your business or you with your product, and you're building this brand around yourself as, hey, I know that product because I follow the guy who made it on Twitter and he's been talking about this literally for the last 3 years. The truth of the matter is people really crave this genuineness around a brand. Right now, everything is all kind of PR and markety, and whenever you follow brands on Twitter, for example, it all can look kind of bland. But occasionally, you'll see these brands get into these like weird Twitter beefs together, and it's hysterical, and we all love it, and we all eat it up because it's more genuine. It adds a little bit of humanity to those brands. So the reason why we love that kind of thing is because we crave that genuineness behind a brand. So if we've been following the developer of a project for a long time and we've been kind of watching as this grew from a blank IDE screen to something awesome that's out in front of them, then they associate that with a little bit more, I guess, humanity. They can kind of attach you to the project. It also builds the literal part of your brand. If you've got a color scheme idea, but you're a developer like me with no artistic talent whatsoever, you can present that color scheme to the public, and somebody who's a little bit more artistic than you can say, hey, that looks awful. And chances are it does. There are actually entire areas of Indie Hackers, which is a social media site built for people who like to build in public. And there are entire areas of this social media site that are just devoted to nothing but critique. And let me tell you, it can get brutal. It's not brutal as in like full of trolls or anything like that, but it's not for the thin skin. They're going to tell you exactly what they think about your brand, about your color scheme, about your app idea. Even if you haven't put anything down in an IDE yet, they'll just critique your idea. And really, it's great for that because, as we'll talk about in a second, you really need to validate your idea. You need to validate your color scheme. You need to validate your logo. You need to validate all of your marketing before you throw it onto a website. It saves you time, it saves you money, and it saves you having it all wrong at the very end of the day when you've put months of effort into it and finding out that you're wrong after all of that effort instead of while you're putting it all in. So that kind of, I guess, prototyping of your brand is super, super useful and one of the parts that I love the most about building in public. And then we've got sharing ideas and transparency. That is the third and probably my most favorite part about building in public. To me, one of the most toxic things about tech culture and I guess the startup space in general has been the kind of secrecy, the toxic secrecy that you find in a lot of areas in tech. Anything from hiding salary ranges to hiding kind of corrupt business practices, to not really talking about your policy towards this, that, or the other. Tech can be a really opaque kind of area, and a lot of times it's opaque just to kind of protect the intellectual property of the companies or the people who are running them. Build in public kind of turns that on its face. There are entire companies who are posting their entire company's salary ranges. There are companies who are posting all of the intimate details about how much money they lost last month and how much money they made this month. Indie Hackers, the site that I was telling you about earlier, actually has an ability to tie your Stripe dashboard in with your social media profile so that your earnings are automatically reflected on your social media. And there's nothing more intimidating than talking bad about somebody or saying that they've got like the wrong idea than going on their Indie Hackers page and it's like, they're making like $40,000 or $50,000 a month, or $60,000 or $70,000 or $100,000 a month. I might be the one that's wrong. So this kind of radical transparency is something that my generation, a lot of younger generations have pushed for in a lot of different areas, whether it be in politics with policing or just like the funding of politicians, or whether it be in education, like why are you teaching us the things that you're teaching and why do we have to learn them? This kind of radical transparency is something that I've always been a fan of, and applying it to startups and businesses is just a really cool idea. On a more micro level, it also allows developers to talk about like little tidbits of code or little pieces of building and a business or an application that they thought was cool. It allows us to share these ideas so that as people digest this information, the more information they digest, the more lessons they're learning, and the less lessons they've got to learn the hard way, which is a really cool thing. The sharing is caring mentality and the build in public circle is really awesome. Now, the next two, or the last two pieces of the building in public philosophy are both kind of pulled from one of my favorite books on startups. It's called The Lean Startup. I'm going to link to it in the description, but chances are you've read it or you've at least heard of it. One of the biggest pieces of the lean startup, or the philosophy within the lean startup, is gaining feedback as early and as often as humanly possible. When you're building in public and you're being radically transparent and you're showing your audience all of the different parts of your business and all of the different parts of your development journey, you're going to constantly be getting feedback. It may not be good feedback, it may not be feedback that you want, and it may not be helpful, but chances are you're going to be able to pull out little tidbits of feedback from your social media streams or from other developers reaching out to you in public or in private. And they're going to tell you, hey, I would tweak this, or hey, that color scheme doesn't look right, or hey, have you heard of this new library in Python? All of these different things can all culminate in you becoming a better developer, your product or your application getting better, and just in general, your experience being easier, because instead of you relying on yourself or your team only, you're relying on entire worlds of developers who all have different experiences and who have all already gone on parts of your journey themselves. So this feedback, you don't want to wait until you've already sunk months or years into a startup to start getting feedback. Like, that's just a horrible idea. What's going to end up happening there is you're going to spend all of this time, all of this money, all of this effort working on an application which basically could be perfected if you just tweaked a couple of things here and a couple of things there along the way. If you do those things along the way, it's relatively minimal effort, changing this color scheme a little bit, maybe making this more efficient using that library, things like that. But at the very end, if you wait until the very end, you've already sunk all of this time, all of this effort, and now you've got a mountain of tweaks that have built up over the months that you've got to fix all at once, or your users aren't going to hop on it. And you're going to just feel depressed, and it's going to be an anxiety-ridden experience for you. Instead, get that feedback early. Get that feedback when you haven't already sunk a ton of time into it. Finally, and also from the Lean Startup book, like I said, linking that below because it has just completely changed the way that I've looked at launching startups. The quick prototyping ideology from the Lean Startup is one of my favorite parts of building in public. Now, what is prototyping? Kind of in short, the idea of it is you've got this massive, beautiful, incredible idea, and you want to release it in its perfected form. There are a couple of reasons why you don't want to wait for that. Basically, like I said before, you don't want to sink all of this effort into something that either isn't ever going to work or needs a ton of tweaks in order for it to work. You have this idea in your head, your baby is this project, but other people may have other reasons for not wanting it exactly that way, or for wanting it a little bit different, or wanting these features over those features. So instead of releasing your huge monolithic project all at once, you release small pieces. You release, basically an unfinished form of your project or your app or whatever product you're selling. And over time, you add all of the pieces that you want and all of the pieces that your users are wanting, so that you get your product in front of people as quickly as possible. You start gaining feedback as quickly as possible, and you start making money as quickly as possible. Basically, if you're wasting a ton of time before you're even making money on a project, basically hoping that eventually it's going to be, rolling in dough, you might be mistaken, and you might sink a ton of effort and time into something that's just never going to work. Quick prototyping is one of the core ideologies of the Lean Startup, and it's also one of the core ideologies in building in public. The idea is every single little piece of information that you release to the public is a tiny prototype. It may not be the actual app. They may not be able to actually click on it, but every time you release a screen grab, it is a prototype. Every time you release a tweet about an idea about something that you might be building, it's a prototypical idea. It's a prototype of an idea. And you're going to put that in somebody's head. They're going to give you feedback about that idea, like, hey, that's really stupid. Nobody's going to pay for that. Or like, hey, if you don't build that, I will. All of this is prototyping and all of this is feedback. And you can take that and start building with it. You can start adding things on or changing features. So those are the 5 reasons why I love building in public and why I hope this kind of philosophy and movement will grow into something incredible. I really hope that you take the things from this kind of weird vlog style video I guess, like a love story into building in public, and you actually build something in public. Start a blog, start a YouTube channel, start tweeting, just do something and start building in public. If you enjoyed this, let me know in the comments, hit the like button, and if you want to watch more videos like this, hit up my channel and hit that subscribe button. Appreciate it. Peace.